Alright, hello. In today's video, I had a really dumb idea of trying to use Ableton like a semi-modular synth, when one thing triggers another and then that other thing triggers something else and it all sounds like it should be together. This is a really convoluted way to use Ableton. However, I think there's some good bits and bobs in here about the MIDI processing abilities within Ableton, and I think it's really good sometimes to work completely differently to how you normally do, because that can kind of force some creativity. I don't know. Anyway, what happens in this video is we, except for the drums, we write 2 MIDI notes, and what we get from that is a 4-chord progression with a pad, a bass, and a pluck. And that's from one MIDI note, and then the next MIDI note triggers a completely generative thing in F major, again with a pad, pluck, and bass. And that's the whole thing is just 2 drawn-in MIDI notes. The rest is MIDI processing, MIDI routing, and a couple of bits of automation. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this video. It's a bit of a silly one, I gotta be honest. This video came out a week earlier on my Patreon. You don't have to subscribe to my Patreon, of course, but if you do, there is a bunch of other stuff on there. Sample packs, samples, some synth presets, some devices, a chunk of my Ableton user library, and I've recently uploaded my first video on how to make an IDM track. It's going to be a little kind of series I do. And anyway, yeah. But again, you don't have to subscribe. I still really appreciate you coming to watch this video, and that's more than enough support for me. However, thank you to the people who are subscribed to my Patreon. Your support really means a lot, and yeah, I can't believe people are actually subscribed to it to begin with. So the fact that as of recording there are like 24, 25 of you, I think, it's crazy, and I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. But anyway, let's get into this video, and let's do some weird routings and kind of sound like a modular synth and do some generative stuff. Brian Eno would be jealous. Alright, so as I mentioned, we're not going to be making really fancy patches or anything. They're all really simple. The first one we're making is a bass using operator and just FMing some stuff with different envelopes so it kind of evolves. We're also calling it Oscillator 1 to try and stick with the sort of modular lingo. And yeah. Yeah, you know, that sounds kind of cheesy, but good enough. Again, we're not going to focus too much on the sounds themselves, so let's bring in another one. Get the amp envelope plucky. Same with the filter envelope, and bring the frequency down quite a bit, and make sure your oscillator is a saw wave. And I'm just going to fiddle around with it a little bit more. And the next one is a pad. Do your standard sort of amp envelope for a pad. Quite a bit of attack, a little bit more release. Just like that. And I'm just going to find an oscillator which I think sounds, I don't know, very techy. That's good. And then we're going to be going into our unison options, and I'm just going to kind of flicker through and see which ones I like. And I don't know, the wavetable synth unison options kind of do a lot of heavy lifting. Like, as you can hear, this noise one almost makes it sound like it has reverb on it already. I don't know, it just makes it sound instantly good. However, I'm just going to try a few others. Shimmer, I hate. That's okay. Let's try random note. That sounds just as cheesy as our bass, so I'm happy for that. Alright, and now we are going to create a MIDI channel. we're going to call this LFOs, because we're just going to stack a bunch of LFOs in here. And again, this is a bad way to do stuff in Ableton. This makes it harder than just using the LFOs in the synthesizers, but as stupid as this video is going to be, I think it's always good to try and just do things differently. And yeah, we're just creating 4 LFOs here and putting them in an audio effect rack, and they all have their own separate chains. And then we're going to map LFO1 to our wavetable position. And again, we could do this in the synths, but also, even though this is harder than just using Wavetable's LFO, I don't really like the Wavetable LFO. I think it triggers weirdly, even when you have re-trigger off. I don't know, I don't like it, so when I'm using Wavetable, I actually prefer to do it like this. Either way, this is kind of a stupid way to do all this, but again, that forces creativity in my opinion. Right, and now we are going to grab a MIDI effect rack, open up the chains and create new chain. Then in here, we're going to grab a chord device. Make sure you drag it into your MIDI effect rack first, and then scale aware it. And now I'm just going to pick F major. Why not? And then down here, we're just going to be slightly shifting the note parameters as they're in scale degrees, so you can't really go wrong. We're just going to see what sounds nice and just shove stuff about until we're happy. Again, we haven't written any MIDI yet, and already we're getting chords, and in a minute we'll have a chord progression. So then I'm holding Alt, dragging down, and just duplicating that. And then I'm going into my chain selector, and I'm not meant to yet, so sorry, I should have just soloed that new chord effect, but whatever. Alright, and now we're just moving stuff up and down in this one too. Just, again, see how it sounds, trial and error, nothing actually matters. We're doing that again with the third device. And now this is the important bit. You want to select all of your chains here, drag out their bars, right-click, distribute ranges equally, and then you've got them like this, which is very nice. And then this little highlighted blue bar at the top here will move in between them, and you'll hear each different device, which is great, but we need a bit of a... we need a different chord there to try and relieve it. That sounds great. Perfect. Lovely. Right-click again. Distribute ranges equally, and then we've got it like that. Perfect. Now I'm just going through the chords a little bit more. Making very few changes, to be honest, but I'm listening to it over and over again, trying to figure out if I actually like it. And then just renaming them chord 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now this next part is quite important. Well, it's really important actually. So we want the bass to follow our chords. So go into your bass track, or oscillator 1, and receive the MIDI from oscillator 3, our pad. But now the bass is playing chords, which is wrong, so switch it to mono, and we need to transpose that down maybe 2 octaves. And as you can hear, the bass is following the chords with a root note, which is perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So now anything that your chords play, your bass will follow and it will sound good. Here I'm adding a pitch device to the bass, but it didn't work, so I'm wondering if the input from our pads is overwriting the pitch device, maybe? I don't know. Maybe someone could let me know. Now I'm just mapping another one of our LFO chains to our bass filter frequency. And using the stray algorithm, which, in my opinion, is the best LFO algorithm. Let me know if you disagree. Let's add a chorus to our bass too. Something I love about the chorus is the warmth dial. Yeah, listen to that distortion. Isn't that lovely? Also, so we don't have to have our channels constantly with their record arm on, just set the monitoring to in instead of auto or off, and then you don't have to have everything record armed, which is nice. Now we're creating another MIDI channel, and we're going to call it Chord Triggers. I'm going to draw in a 1-bar MIDI note, and then make the clip 2 bars. Now we send that to oscillator 3, or our chords. So we have chord triggers going into our oscillator 3 or our pads, and our pads going into oscillator 1 or our bass. So everything eventually gets triggered by the chord triggers. Anyway, we're going to move our MIDI effect rack into chord triggers, send that to oscillator 3, which is then getting sent to oscillator 1. And again, all of this is being triggered by one MIDI note. And then we are going to grab an expression control device, which I love, and at the bottom they've already set one as increment. Change your steps to 4 as we have 4 chords, and change modulate to remote and map it to your chain selector here. For some reason it triggered it backwards, but it gave me a new idea for the chord progression just to change them around a bit. So that's what I'm doing here, is just changing the chords to what they were triggering as. For some reason, it's still triggering backwards. So we're just going to reverse the output range. Have it 100 to 0 instead of 0 to 100. Cool, so now we've got this cool chain going on where one MIDI channel triggers pads, and then the pads trigger a bass, and it all sounds like it's meant to go together. Made another MIDI channel called Arpeggiator 1. We're grabbing a note length with latch on. Then we're putting the arpeggiator after latch on, and the reason we have the latch on is because any MIDI information that comes through will be held, so the arpeggiator can then actually arpeggiate it. We're then sending that to oscillator 2, or our pluck, and getting the in from our chord triggers. So it goes chord trigger, oscillator 3, oscillator 1, chord triggers, Arp 1, oscillator 2. I hope that makes sense. And as you can see here, anytime it's triggered, we have a 1-bar, 1-note MIDI clip, and it's making a whole 4-chord progression with a pluck and a bass, and it's sounding good. Now we're just making a send and return effect, just reverb, because the plucks are sounding way too dry. So I'm just messing around with our hybrid reverb. Lovely. Again, very simple synth patch, but that's alright. And again, to try and fit with the modular thing, we're grabbing a utility, and then in our LFOs, we are going to map LFO 1 to the utility panning. Sure, we could have used an auto pan, but why make it easy when you can pretend you're using Ableton as a modular synth? Alright, now I'm just doing a bit more messing around EQing that reverb, because it's really mid-heavy. So yeah, just getting rid of some of that, boosting the highs. Yeah, alright. Now we've made another MIDI clip and turned our chord trigger MIDI rack thing off, so we just get the note we're playing. And in our first MIDI clip, the one with the 4-chord progression, we're going to turn our MIDI effect rack on through the envelopes of the MIDI clip. And in our second one, we're going to turn it off. Just going to rename our effect rack to chord rack, just so there's less confusion. And now we're going to add another MIDI effect rack with a pitch, scale away the pitch device, open it up, duplicate the chains so you have 3 or as many as you want, and bring an expression control into them. Then make sure the expression control is before the pitch. Then in your MIDI effect rack, go to Random, change Modulate to Remote and map it to the pitch. Then I'm just going to try and find the output range. It doesn't matter too much as we're in scale degrees as we scale away our pitch device. But now, this means anytime we trigger the expression controls, it changes the pitch. And as we have 3 of them, we're going to get some random triads in our scale. So this second MIDI clip is going to be completely generative, completely probability and chance based, and yeah. That's how it sounds with all 3 of those chains on. So I'm calling the first clip full chord, and the second clip random triads, as that's what we have. Then I'm just going to rename our MIDI effect rack to random triads. And then in our MIDI clips, in our random triads clip, we're going to go into envelopes and make sure our random triad rack is turned on. So we automate it to on, and in our full chord clip, we turn that effect rack off. So if we play the first clip, we should have the first MIDI rack on. And that one obviously is the full chord progression one. And then the second clip should turn on the random triad MIDI rack, so we're getting this generative second clip of stuff. So far, we have a structured 4-chord progression and a random triad thing, and we've only written 2 notes. Which I think is really cool. Now I'm just making another send and return. This one's just an echo device. Nothing fancy again. Just, I want oscillator 2, or the pluck, to sound just less dry. Then in our Arp channel, we're going to bring in an expression control and map it to the style. Make sure you're on remote for this. Then we're going to draw some MIDI clips in that, but we're not going to do notes. We're going to go into our envelopes, and in the random triad scene, we're going to turn on the expression control. And in our first one, we're going to turn it off. So, as you can see, on our main channel, we have the second scene playing. That's our random triads, and now it's our random arpeggiator too. And then going to scene 1, we only stick with one style of arpeggiator. I hope this is all making sense. It's quite back and forth, I do apologise. Alright. Let's make some cheesy drums to go with this. We're going to use operator for our drums. We're going to do quite a simple kick. So oscillator 1 will be a fixed velocity, quite low. Shorten your amp envelope, no sustain, just a long decay and that should do you. Not long, but you know, it's to taste. Make sure your algorithm is linear and bring in the second oscillator, also with a fixed frequency, and pump it really high. Then you get that click which helps it stand out in the mix. Then we're adding a noise oscillator. Bring in the filter and slightly use the filter envelope. Nice. And yeah, stands out in the mix quite well with the noise and the clicky oscillator. Now we're going to make a snare, and it's going to be much the same, to be honest. Fixed frequency for your first oscillator. Use the pitch envelope. And then the second oscillator is noise. It's pretty much the same patch, but higher pitch and only one sine oscillator instead of two. Then we're going to make some kind of hi-hat things. We'll just randomly FM in stuff with a short decay, but the important part is time to velocity here. This means that depending on the velocity will depend on how long it decays for. So let's randomize our velocity with our deviation. And now you can hear some are shorter than others and it's got a bit more of a groove. I like it. And now for our random triads, as it is completely random, let's just do 16ths on everything, but bring down the chance of every single note. So our second scene, or the random triads, random part, the whole thing is random. Sweet, so everything in our scene 2 is all randomized and completely computer generated. And then scene 1 has a bit more of our kind of design input. Adding a drum bus onto our cheesy synth drums. And this is how we end up. So, I hope you enjoyed that video. It's a really dumb idea, to be honest, but I think it's quite cool that all of this, bar the drums, is just 2 MIDI notes, and we get a 4-chord progression and a whole generated, algorithmic, generative thing too. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks for the next one. Bye-bye.